All right, so let's get started then. And here's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at an introduction to ACES cluster, which is our main focus for today, but also about how to get an access ID or an account. We're going to be looking at the different kinds of projects you can get. So you've already got your ID or your account or your username, some different words that are used for that. And we're going to find out a bit about the different kinds of project types that are available and what's involved with them, how to exchange access credits for ACES service units. We're going to talk a little bit about NAIRR pilot projects because ACES is one of the resources for the NAIRR projects. And then just a brief getting started on the clusters. That's what we're going to take a look at today. So let's take a little look at what ACES is. ACES is a Dell cluster, and it's a test bed, and it has a lot of really nice features. I'm not going to talk about all these features. That's not our purpose for today, but I wanted to make you aware, for those of you who know what these terms are all about, what a GPU is, an FPGA, H100s and A30s, vector engines. All of these are some very special equipment that are available on ACES, or not equipment, but types of things that are on there, the NEC vector engines, the next silicon coprocessors, all of those things. And ACES is a composable cluster. And we're not going to go into that a lot either, but for those of you who know what composability means, basically it means that you can compose your hardware in a different way without actually changing out all of the connections and wires and things like that, but doing it through software. And so it's a relatively new thing that's still being worked on. We have actually two. Faster, which we'll mention a little bit later, also is a composable cluster. But ACES as a test bed has a lot of, some of the newer specialty kinds of things, especially, really good for AI types of things. Parallel processing, a lot of those things. Just as briefly, again, I'm not going to go all over this. This is for those of you who do know this kind of information, and some of you don't know what any of this is talking about, and don't worry about that, because you don't have to know that in order to use this machine. You don't have to know all of those details, but researchers who are doing more sophisticated types of things want to know these kinds of things. They want to know what's available, and they really are looking for certain things for their specific research needs. So let's talk about getting the account. If you go to the main page, which is on access-ci.org, and then you go to allocations, then you're going to find a page like this that answers a question: what is an allocation? And what are the resources that we have? And then, are you ready to get started? Well, where you want to start is over there to the right, where it says ready to get started. You might want to explore some of these other things. We're going to talk about those, but to actually get in the beginning, you have to create an account there. And so you've done that already, but that's where you go to get your account. And when you look for the new user registration, again, on the getting started, there on this page, the getting started page, there are some different things here for different people. So there's things on access that is for researchers, things that are more pertinent to educators, to graduate students, which were most where we would fall, but there's also information for resource providers and some organizations. So I didn't talk really about what access is. And so let me mention, just so there's some confusion sometimes with people what ACES and access, because they're so similar, what the difference is. So access is, as we'll see in a moment, we'll see what it all stands for. But basically, you can see here, it's a big ecosystem. And so there's a lot of clusters across the nation that are available for people with an ACCESS ID to use. So there's national labs, there's just university resources like we have here at Texas A&M, HPRC, and there are many, many clusters. We are not interested in looking at all of those today because we're really interested in looking at what we have to offer through ACCESS. So you can look at those different things. But here for new registration, actually, if you don't have so Exceed was the precursor to ACCESS. So some people already have an Exceed if they've already been involved with this in the past. And you can have, you don't have to get a new one when you have that. All right. So if you don't already have Exceed or ACCESS account, there's two ways to do it. One is with an existing identity. And in this case, the sign-up process is a little bit simpler. And what that means is an existing identity would be like, I have a university account. We have like a single sign-in login. For those of you who are here at A&M, you would know that. But if you're another university, you have another kind of login. But you can go through your university account as in the way to get into the registration option. If you don't have that, then you will have to enter all the registration info and get an ACCESS specific password and set up the Duo for ACCESS. You can link a GitHub, Google, Orchid, university account later, which is actually how I started because they didn't have this first one back then. And then when it came up, then I was able to use it when I'm going to do something on there if I want to. So when you're doing it, they recommend the Duo security app. That was for me fairly new for ACCESS. The Duo security wasn't initially there either. But it's just like if you're at A&M, you already know all about Duo because we use that here all the time, multi-factor. And if not, you're going to have to do that. But when you go to this page, there's links to all of these to help you know how to do that. Again, all of you already have yours. These are ways that new users can get registered. In the chat, Josh has put a page also that we're going to see just a little tiny piece of in a minute, but he's giving you the page where what we have right here came from the ACCESS website, but HPRC here has a website too to help with that. And so Josh has posted that in the chat if you're interested to look at that. I know you already have them yourself, but you may be helping other people, things like that. Okay. And this is a tiny piece of the page that Josh mentioned on ours, getting started with ACCESS on our page. In our knowledge base, you can find this information and you can go through it right here to help you set up, and it goes through it bit by bit. And we're not going to go through all of those parts right now, but that's just another resource to help you to get started. All right, so let's look at what kind of project types ACES has. I noticed a few names that are familiar from this morning, so I know that some of you attended this morning's primer on using Jupyter Notebook on ACES. So you didn't have to do a project type, which is what we're going to talk about right now, because we put you on our training allocation. in order to be able to get on. So for our trainings, we use a training allocation. And in a moment, you'll see what it is that we chose to do that. And we have that, and we put our users on there for the training, and it's good just for that day until 5 o'clock. Because we may have another training, we have to have space for the other new people to come in. And so we just use that particular project for our training sessions on ACES. All right, so you'll go to a page here that's linked from that first slide I showed you with those options, and you'll get your first project. And here are the things that it talks about here. Again, creating the ACCESS account, we've already done that. Choosing the correct project type. We're going to look at the different project types so you can see what they are in case you are PI eligible or you're a graduate student, and there's also ways that you can do it. There are 2 levels that are appropriate or available for graduate students. Then you figure out the resource that fits your needs. In this case, we are particularly interested in ACES, and we'll talk briefly about our other 2 resources that we have on ACCESS. And then preparing and submitting your request. So we're going to look at what is required for each of these types of projects before you can submit a request to get your own allocation. And then what you get with ACCESS is you get, when you request, you get a certain number of credits on ACCESS. And there's many machines, like I said, that you can get use of. And the way you do that is you take those ACCESS credits and you exchange them for service units on the type of machine you're going to do. So, for example, I have some on ACES and on FASTER and on Launch that I have access to. And you can choose any of those machines that you want to use. Again, we're focusing on the machines that we have, but there are others, and you can find on the website those resources, and you can see what kind of hardware they have. So if there is especially hardware we don't have, you still can choose a different resource that has that. So then you exchange your credits. You can add users to your allocation if you're the PI or you're an allocation manager. If a PI makes you an allocation manager, you can add users to that allocation and then start using those resources. All right, so these are the 4 project types that you can get in ACCESS. The first one is Explore, and that's good for resource evaluation. In other words, you want to take a look at these clusters and you want to learn more about them. You just want to evaluate it and say, hey, how does this work for me? I think it's going to be good. You know, I'm going to give this a try. So you can get a small project type here, not too many SUs come with that. It's good for graduate student projects, for small classes and training events, okay, for benchmarking, for code development and porting and other small scale types of things. The next level up is for research grants with resource needs that are not really high, for campus champions, for larger classes and training events, for graduate student projects. Again, notice graduate student projects here. And graduate students are eligible to apply for these. You have to have PI approval and a letter and all of that, which we'll talk about. And for benchmarking and code testing at scale and gateway development, right? Now, the next level is Accelerate. And this is for experienced users, mid-scale resource needs. You might have multi-grant programs, you're consolidating, you're using this, you're doing collaboration. So with collaborative projects, they don't have to be, you know, just within your university. So you may be doing across universities and preparing maybe for a maximize. If you want to maximize access, you might need to get an Accelerate first, and then do that work that's going to prepare you to be able to apply for the Maximize, which is the largest. And that one needs a lot more resources than is possible for the Accelerate. All of the first three applications are accepted all the time, but in the final one, in the Maximize, they only do those semi-annually. So another reason you might start with an Accelerate before you move to Maximize. You need to plan ahead for that Maximize because they only review those or accept those twice a year. Here's a little bit of a comparison of some of the things about these different project types. In the Explore, you can get 400,000 access credits. Now, what does that mean? Again, that's going to determine on what machine you exchange them on. So if you're familiar with, for example, A&M systems, others are regular systems, if you're actually here at A&M, then you know that a service unit is an hour of computing, and it's based on some other things that we'll just take a brief look at later. And the project duration is for 12 months. It can be extended, or unless, I mean, if you have a grant, it's more than that. So you can say when you apply for that, when you can say the ending of your grant, when it's going to be. All right. So you don't have to renew it every year. It can be for the duration of your grant. If you set it up that way, when you do it, tell when your grant is going to end, put that in the boxes that you have to fill in, when the grant started, when it ends, and it can be for the duration. And you don't have to reapply every year for that. Now, if you don't use it for long, you know, you get one and you don't use it for a long time, then it may expire. So you want to make sure that you are using it if you get one of those. Again, you can see that requests are accepted anytime. You can even have multiple ones. I have a couple of, well, I think mine are Discover, but and the requirements we're going to look at in more detail later. As you can see down here, as each one goes by, it gets bigger. There's a 1-page proposal for the Discover, a 3-page proposal for the Accelerate, a 10-page proposal for the Maximize. Because you're getting a lot more resources, you need to justify why you need those resources. And these first two, again, are fairly quickly and easily approved, but the other two have a panel merit review, so it might take a little bit longer. If, again, you're familiar with, if you're at A&M, some of you are, some of you are not, you know that whenever you apply, you may know that when you apply for the basic account, if you're a student, it's not very long to get it reviewed. It's reviewed by staff here. Sherry, you can see Sherry there, and myself are two of the people that do that work. The other two are not on here today, that generally do that work of approving those applications. But then on ours too, there's a level, there's a startup application, and there's a research level. And on the research level, it has a review board that looks at those. So that's very similar to the kinds of things that we do here. Notice that all of these allow multiple requests, except Maximize is usually only one. There might be exceptions to that rule, but that's the really big one. So let's take a look at each one of these a little bit. What do we need if we want to get the Explore request? You need a summary of the planned work, and these summaries, or sometimes abstracts, they may be called, are actually posted publicly, okay? And right down here, there's a link to where some examples of those public abstracts are found so that you can look at them. So those summaries or abstracts are on the, anyone can look at them on the ACCESS website. All right, you also need like it doesn't have to be NSF BioSketch specifically. You can have that or a CV or a resume. Most people just use an NSF BioSketch because most people that are applying for this, except for students, already have an NSF BioSketch. And basically that's a brief, it's 2-page, rather than a full CV. So resume, CV, you don't need a full CV for this. If you're a student, you need a letter of collaboration from your advisor to get your own allocation. Now, if your PI gets an allocation, they can put you on it to use it. But if you want your own and you're a graduate student and your advisor approves that, then they can write a letter to help you to be able to get that. Then you're going to have to fill in some data fields, the title of your project, some research keywords, what areas of science, field of science that you're working in. And if you have a grant, again, you're putting that information in there. And when you put that grant information in there, then that's where, you give the ending date so that you can see that you can get your allocation for more than just 12 months. Let's look at the next level. For the Discover, you have to have all the stuff that was just listed on the Explore request. But now you also need a 1-page description of the proposed use of the ACES resources. You're going to talk in that description how you're going to use them. Like, what are you going to work on? What are you going to do with it? And then your research or education objective, depending on whether you're doing research or you're doing it for a class or a course, then you're going to put the appropriate thing for that. If you're doing it for research, you're going to give your research questions. If you're doing it for an education, you're going to talk about your classroom exercises or other activities that you might have on there. They might have exercises, they might have a little research project or something like that. So the next thing is you need a description of the resource needs. Specifically, what are some computing architectures that you need? Do you need GPUs? That's getting pretty popular these days. Do you need large memory? You're going to need more than the normal amount of memory. You need to specify what your needs are in that way. Your storage needs, what are you going to need in that regard? And is there any specific software that you're going to need to use? All of those are things that need to go if you have a Discover in addition to the other. And you can see why that would be the case. This is not, just exploratory. I'm going to check this out and see how things are. I'm going to do a small class. Now you're talking about a bigger class. You're talking about some research. You're needing a little bit more. So you have to provide more information in order to be able to, they can see that you're applying, for something that you're going to need these resources. And you're going to use one or more clusters, one or more machines or on these, on your work, okay? Because now you're not just applying for one machine. You're applying to have access to exchange credits for any number of possibilities. The next level then for the ACES, notice this one needs all the things for the Explore that we just looked at. All right. The Explore was the first one. But now instead of a 1-page description, you need a 3-page description explaining how to use it, because this is a bigger research project. So you need to be able to tell more. You want in your research objectives, your estimate of your compute, storage, and other resources, which you kind of already talked about, but now we're talking about computational plan. More specialized needs besides software, any other kinds of things that are special to your particular project or grant that you need to do. And here, you're going to have to give team qualifications and readiness to use these resources. Okay. So as you can see, we're ramping up here. This used to be the last one, and it's only more recently that the 4th one and the highest level has come into being. probably because as we're going along, there's a bigger need for that with all the research that we're doing. And, you know, one of the things that uses a lot of compute resources is AI, which is really big nowadays. Some of you might be involved in AI research. So the maximize is the largest for large scale research projects that you need more than you could get with the accelerate. You remember the chart that told you how many access units you could get at each level. So if you need more than that, then you're going to this level. And these are only reviewed semi-annually because they're a lot more complicated and there's a lot more stuff involved in your application that you have to look at. And so we're not going to go into all the ones on that one. There would be few, if anybody, on here right now that is ready for this level. Okay. I'm certainly not. And so if you need to do that, that's available too. But you wouldn't start before that anyway. You wouldn't just go straight to that regardless. All right, now that you got your allocation, then you're ready to exchange your credits for ACES or other service units. So where do you go? This is just a snapshot from one of my allocations. You can see that it's an ACES educational one. So I got this one because I can use it for people who might be, we could have a professor here, for example. We have professors that use our resources in their classes. And on our other clusters, GRACE is a common one they use. If you're here at A&M, you might know that one. But you might be using ACES or Launch or Faster or some other cluster that's available on ACCESS. And so mine is an educational one. It's not a research one. And you can see here that I have gotten ACES as my resource. On one of mine, I also have like Faster under here. So I have some on both ACES and Faster from my ACCESS credits. And you can see over here that there's a place to exchange credits for resources. You can see I have 193,761 ACCESS credits available. I think I started with 200,000 on this one. You can see that this one is an Explorer and it's from January this year because I just renewed it to January of next year. Because I don't have a grant on this one. I'm using it for educational purposes. And so that's why mine is for 1 year. And I started, I believe, like I said, with 200,000 ACCESS credits. And I still have a lot because I didn't exchange very many yet. There's a reason for that. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you that before I forget to tell you, is that whenever you exchange your credits and you put users on there, like on mine, you won't see my users, but I could click on here and show the users on mine. I have some people, you know, that are on mine. When I put users on there, they all have access to all of the credits that I have exchanged, which means one of those people could use up all of my credits that I have. But unless I made them an allocation manager, they cannot exchange more credits or add more users or do any of those kind of things. All right, so they cannot do anything except use what I've put out there for them to use. That's important there are some uses, and I know that Jupyter Notebook is one of them. Some of y'all were in the training this morning. So, you know, like, for example, on Jupyter Notebook, if you don't close it out and stop it, it's going to run in the background. It's going to use up your service units or your credits. Okay. So that's one reason I didn't exchange all of mine. I have people on here and I don't want them to accidentally, if they're doing, for example, Jupyter Notebook, which somewhere when I first were putting some people on one of my allocations, I didn't want to take a chance. I used all of my allocation up because someone accidentally left that running. All right. So that's why I didn't exchange a lot at one time. I can go in and exchange more anytime I want to. And here's where you do it. When you click on that place where I showed you, then it's going to look like this. And right here, when it gives the balance, see, when I did my exchange, I got 50,000 on ACES, 50,000 SUs on ACES. If I want to change that, I just have to move that number to tell me how many I want on ACES, and it'll use as many ACCESS credits as it needs to get there. Okay. Now, I can know what it's going to be because I'll show you that exchange rate in a minute. But that's how I make I get some more SUs. And here's a little box where you can ask for more credits. Okay, that's for access credits. Okay. Now, I would not ask for any now because they're not going to give them to me because I've hardly used any that I have. But if I needed some more, I might be able to get some. You have to justify it to get more credits. Okay. So that's all you have to do is you just have to fill in on how many I wanted on ACES. I wanted 50,000 SUs on, that's the unit. So it's going to show you what the unit is for your particular machine that you're doing. Now I just did this, I just renewed this one the other day, so nothing's been used yet. You can see that right here. All right. So that's what it looks like if you have an allocation. You can also, if someone has an allocation, like your PI has an allocation, if they make you not just a user, but an allocation manager, you can see this as well. Now, there's a whole Access Exchange calculator at this website down here, and there's a whole bunch of systems on there. I just pulled out the ones that we have. So for 1,000 access credits, I could get 8,015 SUs on ACES. And that's why you could see previously that my access credits, look how many I have left. I still have 97% of my access credits left. I didn't use very many to get 50,000 SUs on ACES. That's because of this exchange rate right here. Okay, that's pretty nice, huh? The same thing is true on Faster. It's only 8 on launch. And I'm not really sure if that's, it's on, this is what it says on the website, but I think that may have been updated because I don't know if that's still actually the exchange rate for launch. Wes, do you happen to know? I see Wes is on here and he's used launch. May not know that offhand.
Right now, I don't believe we're charging on launch. So there's no need for the exchange rate.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so you won't have to worry about that. You're not going to get a tiny bit of launch. And I guess that's probably a placeholder right there where it says the 8. I think I remember hearing something about that. So anyway, so that'll give you an idea when you get your, if you were looking at ACES or Faster, it'll give you an idea of how many access credits you would want to do your project if you know already ahead of time you're going to use ACES. Now, I mentioned the service units, and I said it was per hour. It's per hour of compute time, but there's a lot of difference actually in what that compute time is on, right? And so here is the ACES charging scheme so you'll know. So for NVIDIA A30s, it's going to be 128 service units per hour. All right. Okay. That's a compute hour. Okay. Same on the NVIDIA H100s. Intel PVC GPUs are 60. FPGAs, Bitware is 100. Intel is 50. The NEC vector engine is 150. NEC silicon 100. Those are all the ones because of these specialty kinds of things. How much it takes for a service unit or an hour of compute time for those different specialty things that we have on ACES. So that's another thing. If you are doing one of these allocations and you want to calculate how much you need to ask for and how much it's going to take to do the things that you might already know about doing. If you don't already know this and you're starting out, you're going to find out once you start doing it. You'll look at the work you're doing and you'll benchmark. In other words, you'll use the work that you're doing. You'll just get like one of those explorers, and that's where you kind of find out how things work, and you can do some benchmarking to figure out what you're going to need when you actually apply for a bigger one for a class or more likely for research. And I know sometimes if you're a graduate student, your professor really doesn't do most of the work because you're the one that's your research and you're the one who's doing it. And so remember that you can get your own explore. You can even get your own discovery or discover if your professor provides the letter of support. And you can use that as a benchmarking. And then if you're going to need something really big, your professor, once you know what you really need, you can give him that information that he could get the research one for you to do the work that y'all are doing together, where you might be doing most of the actual computing. All right. So remember, the earlier ones do benchmarking, see what it takes, how much it takes to do those runs that you're going to do, and how many runs you're going to need to do your work. And then you can calculate how many SUs you need, and especially if you're using some of these specialty ones where you can figure out what it is that you need. So when you apply, you can carefully calculate, because you might remember that on the third level, it really says you need to calculate, right? The other ones, you're saying how much and you're really estimating. When you get to that level, you're really calculating. You've done some benchmarking, you know what's needed, and now you're going to calculate and show the calculation. I need to do this many runs of this using this, and it's going to take me this many SUs per run, and therefore here's the total I need for that. And you might be doing several different things and you have to calculate each one. We have that kind of thing on our research applications for our clusters, just for the A&M people here. So the same thing applies if you're doing this work on ACCESS and you're using ACES or any other machine. You're going to have to do the same thing. Okay, let's move on. The NAIRR pilot projects. All right, so if you don't know what it is, the National Artificial Intelligence Research Resource, that's what NAIRR stands for. And this one is a project that is intended to connect U.S. researchers and educators to computational, data, and training resources to advance AI research and research that employs AI. So using AI or doing AI research, this is really a special project for that. And so the way you do this is because what's happening here is federal agencies, for example, NSF, the National Science Foundation, they're collaborating with government supported and non-government partners. So HPRC is a non-government. We have ACES cluster, which is available nationally through ACCESS, and it is one of the NAIRR resources. And so the idea here is there's that collaboration there for implementing a pilot. So that's pilot. It's just like you're used to seeing a pilot sort of research or whatever it is, to get ready for a full NAIRR implementation. Right. Now, what's the purpose of these pilots? To spur innovation, to develop workforce talent, because notice it talked about it's not just for universities, but universities don't just do work in getting degrees, but they do some things that have to do with workforce, and you're developing workforce talent at a university, improving capacity and advancing trustworthy AI. So there's the main website, and this is the main page, and you can click on these to learn or to subscribe for updates. So let's learn a little bit about this, and you can explore more detail later if you want to get a NAIRR pilot. I'll put this in quotes because a lot of the stuff that I took here is directly off the NAIRR website. I did not want to put some of this in my own words and not represent it correctly or accurately. So this is kind of a new program, so I want to make sure I give you the exact information. All right, so the idea is that, again, it's focused on AI, whether it is for classroom use or for research. Again, those are the two areas, just like we saw on the ACCESS. Those are the two areas they're interested in. But it's all about artificial intelligence. And so what they're saying is that a lot of researchers don't have the access to all the AI resources they need to do their research. And so the NAIRR is in order to share that. And also there will be training and other resources, all of the things that need to do to make AI resources and tools available to everyone. All right. That's the idea, is trying to make it available to everyone nationwide. It's very interesting because it wasn't long ago that if you weren't in a big university or you weren't in the right place, you didn't have access to the high performance computing that you do now. So no matter where you are now in the US, there's not only ACCESS, which you can already get access to, but it's that word again. It's always confusing when you talk about access and getting access to ACCESS. That's an unfortunate name that they chose. But this is to really make sure that people across the US all have the equal opportunity for these kinds of resources. So what is the pilot? And that's to demonstrate this concept we're trying to look at and spur all these things that they just said on the other page, to advance all of that in our society. And so they just want to give you more access to different AI related infrastructure resources. Takes a lot, as you know, a lot of compute power for a lot of these things. And so they want to make sure that that is available. Not everyone has that kind of compute power at their university or available to them before recently when these things have come about. So it started actually just 1 year ago, the initial launch of the NAIRR pilot, and it provides researchers and educators, remember there's two things you can do, research or education, to apply for advanced computing software, because that's another thing that comes into play, is you don't have access to the software platforms, collaborations, again, collaboration. If I'm here at A&M and I'm using my resources at my university, then I want to collaborate with someone somewhere else. It's not trivial to be able to do that. There are some possibilities, but they're limited in how I can do that. But by using these national resources where other people in other states, other universities, even in industry, are able to collaborate through these resources. You can get one and you can put someone on there who also has an access ID to be able to get on and put them on your allocation so y'all can actually work together. So it really advances that idea of collaborating on some of these things. Also, the second thing here is to provide some AI specific resources like pre-trained models, AI ready data sets. Okay, it's not just about the compute resources, but they want to also be able to share some data and models that are already pre-trained that you can then follow up and continue training instead of having to start from scratch. So there's a lot of things they're trying to provide here through NAIRR, not just access to high performance computing, which you could already kind of get through ACESS. But now this is the idea is to share a lot more and be able to collaborate. So there is a recording here. This is the page this is on, and you can get a recording that was done, well, a year ago this month, actually, and to talk about this. Right. So if you're not familiar with the NAIRR pilot, that's a little bit about it. So in order to do it, you need to have either a cross-cutting focus area or a different focus area. We'll look at that first of all, the cross-cutting. So cross-cutting focus areas, you need to want to have one of these focus areas. Cross-cutting is advancing AI methods that enable scientific discovery, because that's going to be across different areas, not one specific thing. Creating open source foundation models for specific applications. And that's what we were talking, getting some models that we can share and make open source and provide those for other people. Using large scale models to explore complex data sets interactively. Advancing approaches for integrating simulations in AI, using experimental data from all these kinds of instruments and sensors. Empowering use of scientific data by other stakeholders and the public. Okay. Training and educating scholars. Probing key AI challenges. So these are cross-cutting focus areas that you can choose from and go into something under that umbrella. Or you can do domain-specific focus areas. That would be things like accelerating societally relevant research on AI safety, reliability, security, and privacy. Right? That's a more domain specific. Empowering advances in cancer treatment and individual health outcomes. Right? Again, a more domain specific rather than cross-cutting. Supporting resilience and optimization when you're talking about agriculture, water, grid infrastructure. Improving the design, control, and quality of the advanced manufacturing systems. Addressing earth, fire, environmental, and climate changes via the integration of data and models. So to be able to pull all of this together. These are the kinds of things that you would want to do to advance AI research. And one of these areas is something that they put out there. Now, it does say then at the bottom of this page that there are others that would be considered. Okay. So you could come up with something that doesn't really fit one of these, but you're like, I think this is really important. They will consider it. But these are the ones that they know they want to support. But you may have something they didn't think of and they were like, wow, that would be great. And they will support you in that. This is just a piece. This is a snip of a project. This is NAIRR project 240218. So you can see there's already quite a few of them, called Detection and Recognition of Euphemisms. And these are, I mentioned earlier about on ACCESS where they have the public abstracts. This is on NAIRR. NAIRRs you can look up to see those. It's right down here at this link. You can go there and see the projects that have been awarded so far. They're all listed there. The field of science is going to be artificial intelligence and intelligent systems. This one is, and these are NAIRR pilots so far. Now, there's two things that they could be right now. They could be research, they could be education. This one is on ACES that we've been talking about. There are a number of them on ACES. There is not an educational one on ACES yet. So I used a research one example here because there are a number of research ones on ACES. And this is for work with large language models, which there is a lot of work done on that, but there are other things as well as that. And you can see right here, the abstract is a little longer than this, but if I put it all on this slide, then it would have been so tiny, you couldn't read it. So I thought maybe you could at least read a little bit of it and see the first part of it and what they're trying to do here in their abstract. You can look at the full abstract. If you go to this link, you can find all of the other ones. What you do when you go there, because there are many, many of them, so you don't want to just, you might not want to just scroll down them all, but there are search things you could do. Like I just searched for one on ACES. You can search for the particular cluster you're interested in and see what's been done there. Or you can choose, I think I might have chosen the university. I did several like research to look, and I just chose some different search parts that are on that page. There's different search things you can use on that page. So you can see what they're doing here. They're looking at euphemistic expressions, and it's kind of interesting because the linguistic properties they're looking at, and they're in different languages. So it's pretty complicated. That would be very complicated, but that's where the AI part comes into this kind of thing with the large language model. You can see this one was just from last October the 25th, and it goes for 1 year to October 25th of this year. All right, now the other one that I already mentioned was classroom or educator resources. So you can get a pilot classroom resource. You have to have a description no longer than 3 pages. It describes your course, the requirements that you need for the resources available in this program, and they also say do not put any proprietary information in the proposals. That's a quote directly off of this website. And here also the eligibility directly off of there. It is US-based educators and researchers teaching undergraduate or graduate courses or shorter duration training sessions to US-based students that include subject matter and artificial intelligence and require them to use advanced computational resources. Doesn't matter what discipline, this has to meet those requirements. And you cannot have people from other countries in the courses or the training systems. They have to be US based. So they have to be here. That doesn't mean you can't have a graduate student who's from another country. They're based here right now. So in case that's confusing to you. So I am just waiting for them to open this up to K-12 so we can use it in our summer camps in cybersecurity in AI, something we do a little bit of. But that's not available yet. I think it will be at some point, and then we can go there and bring it down to the level of high school students. It'd be cool. We are almost done, so even though it's been about an hour, I'm not going to take a break because we'll probably finish in about 5 minutes and be ready for questions. So let's keep going, getting started on ACCESS and NAIRR pilot clusters. Just a very brief, all I'm going to say is this is kind of summarizing what we have versus via the NSF ACCESS and NAIRR pilot. All right, so here is what actually I didn't tell you earlier what ACCESS actually stands for: Advanced Cyber Infrastructure Coordination, Ecosystem, Services, and Support. Okay, it's supported by the National Science Foundation, and I already mentioned that it's for national high performance compute resources, so that any university, professors, or students if they have, you know, the letter and they have the Explorer Discovery Access project, are able to have these resources that have not always been available. We have 3 resources that I've mentioned. ACES is the one we've been talking about. This is the reason I've been talking about ACES mostly is because ACES is our cluster that has the most cutting edge sort of hardware that you might want to have when you're doing AI research. And I already showed you a little bit about that, but there's more. You can go to our pages and take a look at it and get, you know, more information that you might want to know about that. FASTER is another one we have, and I mentioned earlier that it's also composable as ACES is, and it's also through ACCESS. But if you're here at A&M, if you've got an account on our sources, you probably have some FASTER SUs there. Okay, so FASTER is available in both places. A certain percentage of FASTER, when we got the grant for that, was allocated for the national use, and then other portions are available for our researchers here. It doesn't, if you're here, you can still get it on ACCESS. Just because if you're here at A&M and you can get it through our regular system that's just for A&M people, you can get FASTER, but you can also get FASTER through ACCESS. So you're not exempt, you're not excluded from being able to get that. And Launch is the newest cluster. And it was designed originally especially for undersourced minority serving institutions and prioritized the schools in the A&M University system, because we have a number of system schools that they can't use the other resources that we have had that have been just based here in College Station. So Launch was put out there. We did the proposal for that for just it's the newest one, and it's just a very standard kind of really sturdy, if you will, reliable type of cluster. It's not composable, but it has very nice hardware on it. So those are the ones that are available on ACCESS. So anyone nationally can get SUs on those 3 systems. So I'm just curious, could I have a show of hands who are not Texas A&M users? You're from somewhere else? Anyone? Okay. Well, welcome, Lauren. I hope you get to use one of our resources through ACCESS. Also, on the web page, there are knowledge-based pages for ACES, for FASTER, and for Launch. There's also a YouTube channel we have that has 2 playlists that you would be interested in. One of them is ACES Getting Started. So there's several actual videos there. It's a playlist of several videos. And then the ACES training that we've held is also, there's a whole channel there. Okay. Okay. I'm glad you're here and you're going to help others, Lauren. I'm so glad you're here. Do spread the word. And okay, so, all right. So Janelle already has ACES access. Okay, great. So we do have a couple of people who maybe have already used ACES besides our staff. Well, that's really all I have for you today. Thank you.